can either get off the internet or strike an armed rebellion and decide to take down the government. I'll tell you, if you've watched the North African armed rebellions lately, they don't work so well. Tunisia is sort of a success story, but everything else hasn't really gone the way they expected. So, or you can write code. So we write code, we do advocacy, we do trainings. I spend most of my time training law enforcement and their helpers on how to use Tor, how to be anonymous. It's really tough to be a 13-year-old girl if you're coming from FBI.gov. Criminals pick up on that really, really quickly. There's a very quick story is there was a child trafficking ring being investigated, and the agents investigating are coming out of Quantico, Virginia. I don't know if any of you know what Quantico, Virginia is, but the only thing that's there is a pizza shop, a US Marine base, and the FBI. Two of those threes seem suspect to any criminal looking at the IP address or where this 13-year-old girl is coming from. They don't care if it's the Marines or the FBI, it's risky enough, so it blew their entire operation. It never said FBI, it never said anything, it was like some, quote, private VPN. But it came out of Quantico, Virginia, and that was enough to scare the ring away from this person who joined. So what are we? We're an online anonymity software and network. We mostly develop the software. The network is run by roughly 5,200 volunteers in the world right now, in something like 88 countries. The goal of that is so that no one organization can simply gather all the nodes together, collect everything, and go seize all the servers. We are in countries that do not have MLATs or legal agreements with each other, and we as a Tor Project, the nonprofit, do not run the Tor network. It's all volunteer driven because we've been told repeatedly, if we, the nonprofit, if I personally ran any part of the Tor network, I would become liable for everything ever done over Tor ever. And I already have enough agents visiting my house and the office. I don't need more. We're freely licensed. Our goal is to make it ubiquitous, that you can use Tor however you want. We've talked to many of the Fortune 500, the big IT vendors, who I won't name, but they've been interested in putting a Tor module in because a lot of their clients are asking, how can I hide my address when I'm online? Because places, what does the CIA Google for? Google knows exactly what the CIA is searching for. And who do they sell that data to? So if you can hide who you are online, then you're a little bit safer. We do a lot of research. We actively encourage researchers to attack us, break the design, break the code, and the better ones actually give us solutions, not just here's a way to break your code. Here's a fix for your design. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And here's research. I got my PhD off doing this. Here's 3 or 4 years of research that says this fix works. You should consider putting it in code. And then almost invariably they go off to the financial industry, make a lot of money, and never pay attention to PhD research again. But meanwhile, we have a number of PhD candidates and students and master students and now undergrads at all these places working on things. Recently, we've been doing a lot of work with NorgiNet because they're all IPv6, and we're working on Tor over IPv6. It does work. It might not be as anonymous as IPv4, but it's a work in progress. We have a number of tools. We have this Tor, of course, which is this little command line daemon that runs in the background. It's not very exciting. It's not very usable. Tor browser bundle is what most people think of. It's a modified, heavily modified Firefox that has Tor included and just does everything for you to keep you anonymous by default. If you decide to go log into Facebook or Twitter or anything, pay your taxes online through it, it's up to you. The point is that you're anonymous by default. What you divulge is yours. Which ties into this. First rule of privacy. You decide what you share, not what someone else should take from you. And then here's a helpful Venn diagram. The internet's not private. It never has been. Just because you don't put your name on something doesn't mean you can't be tracked down and tied back to you all the time. Amazon.com knows a lot about me. It doesn't seem to matter where I come from. I mean, obviously once I log in, they know who I am and what I'm doing. But over the past few years, I've been using Amazon. They know a lot about my data, my shopping habits, what I look for. If I do actually come from my home IP address, they can quickly delineate between who's me and my daughter. We obviously search for different things, thankfully, but I'm not a 13-year-old girl, and what she searches for, what I search for on Amazon, it's shocking when you first go to the page, they're sort of confused. Wait, who is this? we know this household, we know this IP address, we're not sure who this is. Is this Andrew, is this his daughter? And then, within 2 or 3 clicks, all the products change to which one it is. So who actually uses this thing? The vast majority of our users are normal people, just like you, me, whatever. They go out, they do searches, they want to keep their private information private, they're happy to be in the non-anonymous browser, using Google, using Facebook, using whatever. But then they want to go look up a condition, or they don't want the ads tracking or whatever. They go back to Tor browser, do their work, back and forth. Law enforcement are huge users of Tor. They will never admit it publicly. I spend all my time flying around to meet all sorts of agencies, to talk about Tor, to talk about how to be anonymous online, because as crime moves online, they need to move online. And the more interesting thing is, a number of officers and agents are now concerned about their families being used against them. They're all on Facebook, they're all on Twitter, VContact, or whatever, and now the criminals are picking up on this, go for your circle. Pressure your kids, kidnap your kids, do other horrible things to your family to get you to stop investigation or to get you to back off. Human rights activists is sort of obvious. They're already in a country where they're not very popular, and they need to protect themselves when they're online, even just from their traffic, where they're going, what they're looking at. That's sometimes enough to get a visit from a Ministry of Culture or something that says, you shouldn't be doing this, stop it. Business executives, militaries don't tell us what they use it for. And then my specialty has been abuse victims, and the ability to be anonymous and not tie your current life to your past life as part of the healing process is really powerful. And I've been surprised at how many people have come to me. They're very well-known people. They've been abused in the past, and they want to help others, but they don't want to help others as their personal name or their public name, because then they get all sorts of extra attention they didn't want to get. They just wanted to help someone. So being anonymous helps them a lot. This is a shot from Egypt during the first revolution about 2 years ago, and they're still revolting today, or trying to revolt, or trying to throw governments out, or swap governments, or do whatever. We did a lot of work with Egyptians. We happened to be there in 2008 doing a lot of work with them, and really women's rights activists trying to improve the lot of women in Egypt. And we did all this training with the various human rights organizations, and then when the government shut off the internet, and everything else went wrong, they had all this protection. They had all this electronic protection. Obviously, Tor is not going to stop any sort of munition or bullet, but being able to protect themselves when they're online mattered a lot as they're trying to help people around the country, even organize, even get information out that says, regardless of what you see on the TV of everything on fire, that's only a couple of places, everything else, everyone's fine, so-and-so is still alive, don't worry about it. So there's another use case here of criminals. Criminals obviously want to be anonymous online. Criminals are opportunists. They will take any technology they possibly can and pervert it. For 2,000 euros an hour, I can buy real-time FaceTime using Apple's FaceTime technology, chat of watching someone abuse a 5-year-old boy. It's horrible. Apple obviously isn't going to advertise that, but again, criminals are opportunists. You can get real-time FaceTime chats with somebody. The ad is always, I'm talking to my daughter or something over FaceTime to check in with her. Criminals use that and say, look, I can do these horrible things with it. Thanks for making the technology. This is from the Silk Road takedown. Silk Road was a website run by a guy who was trying to become the Amazon of illicit drugs in the US, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It was all over the news the past 2 weeks. It's still all over the news today because now that they caught the guy, they got the server, and in the server, he kept all the data. He apparently logged everything and kept it for years. So now all these Silk Road users are at risk because this guy apparently had poor operational security. And now that the federal government has his servers, law enforcement has some pretty smart people, and now they're going through it trying to reverse engineer every transaction. Who's who, who's whatever. And apparently 8 people got arrested this morning in the UK, US, and Sweden for early on users of Silk Road. But so again, law enforcement goes after the humans. Tor obviously wasn't much of an impediment to them to get into it, especially once you capture the human who has access to everything. It's pretty easy to pressure a human into doing things he may not want to do. And that goes the flip side of organized crime. So then there are, Iranian hackers who do all sorts of stuff, whether they're Iranian or not, sort of irrelevant. They put up pages like this. And then this is the Tunisian information ministry. They had these pictures all over the place, and some of these pictures were leaked as to here's what's going on inside Tunisia just as the whole revolution was happening years ago. So people realize that just because the phone works now and the network works now doesn't mean it's actually safe. So how many people actually use Tor? Well, the first trick is run an anonymous network. There's no registration, there's no demographics collected. We have a US National Science Foundation grant to find out how do you measure an anonymous network. There are roughly 1 million daily users. Typical use case we've seen for across the board, whether it's normal people, law enforcement, militaries, whatever, is they have their normal browser, they have Tor browser, they connect it up, they do their Tor thing when they need to, and they shut it back down. So we have a lot of churn daily users. Other thing you've probably heard is there's a botnet that said, hey, this Tor thing is really cool, let's use that. For hidden service communication, for command and control. So our Tor user graph looks really cool. It goes right up to like 5 million or so, but we believe about 4 million of those are actually bots. And we're working on making life more difficult for bot herders to not use Tor. We want to support the humans using Tor, not the bots. So how does a normal proxy, VPN, all this stuff work? You set up a server somewhere in the world. Say you're a North Korean refugee, you escape to South Korea, you set up a server so your friends in North Korea can connect to your computer and then relay off to whatever website or people they want to talk to. That works really well. That works really well assuming you trust the relay in the middle. If the relay goes evil and happens to be a North Korean agent recording all these North Koreans connecting to itself, then you're in trouble because now it has all your connections, what you're doing, exactly everything that goes through it is recorded and sent back to the government, maybe. Even if the relay, you trust it, you trust the network around it, because the network gets to see everything going in and out of the server, so it can record all the exact same data, even if the relay in the middle is run by people you really trust. So what does Tor do? So we have software, you have to download it. It runs on pretty much any computer you can imagine, from Androids to iOS to old IRIX systems to Windows to Macs to pick a system and we probably compile on it. It downloads a picture of the whole Tor network, and then your client controls where the traffic goes. It picks 3 nodes at a minimum, an entry, a middle, and an exit. And what you do is you send your traffic. It wraps all your traffic in encrypted tunnels or layers, onions, and you send your traffic through here. So the risks to the Tor network are the entry node can see where you are, because this uses a direct connection from your IP address. Some people do all sorts of things. They'll go down to a laundromat and they'll use some stolen Wi-Fi and they'll do something else to hide that first connection from the entry node to the client. And then these two, everything is rapid encryption, so someone sniffing right here at most can learn you're connecting to a Tor node. They can't see what you're doing inside your traffic. We actually have a thing called pluggable transports and bridges, which are non-public nodes. You generally have to get them through your social graph, which has its own risks, but if you trust your social graph, then you're all set. Some people call those social networks, some people call those friends. Your friend says, hey, here's my IP address, I'm running this non-public node, you should connect to it. You connect to it, and then no one sees what's going on. Traffic between all these nodes is layered in encryption, and then the last node has the last layer of encryption, and you go off to your destination site, whether it's chat server, web server, your home server, whatever it is. The exit node can record your traffic and can see what you're doing. If you're not using encrypted protocols, then it can actually manipulate your traffic, because it's all plain text.